On mute.
Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you, Janine. Welcome, everybody. We have a quorum. Welcome, Sarah. I see you there. Dolores, I think you're with us. So I want to welcome everybody tonight. This is the Clinton Health Kitchen Land Use Committee of Manhattan Community Board 4. We have basically 3 items to discuss tonight. 1 big item, 2 smaller items. Janine Dempsey is with us. She will run the meeting. Jesse is on his way to Key West, I think, though he may join us later, or he wishes he was on his way to Key West. As you know, the Executive Order 202.1, we can do this by Zoom. It's going to be recorded. And yeah, I think you all know the routine. I hope the community members are with us. And Janine, if community members, after the committee talks, if they want to speak, what is the routine for them?
You press *9 or *6. You can unmute yourself and then you can speak, or you can raise your hand and we'll bring you over.
Okay, thank you, Janine. I see Frank. Welcome, Frank. I see Chris. Before we start, I'd like to go around and have the committee members introduce themselves. I'm going to start up here with Joe on my left. Joe?
Joe Verstuccia, committee member and co-chair of Housing, Health, Human Services.
And we're privileged tonight to also have the chair of the community board with us. On my right is...
Hi, thanks, JD. Mr. Chair. Hi, everybody. Jeffrey LaFrancois, chair of CB4. Pleased to be here this evening.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Brian, I see you down here. Brian.
Hi, all. Brian Weber, public member of the Land Use Committee.
Welcome, Brian. Leslie.
Thank you.
Leslie Williams, member committee.
Welcome, Leslie. Paul, are you with us now?
Hey, it's Paul Devlin. I am a member of the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee and also co-chair of the Chelsea Land Use Committee.
Okay, thank you. And Theodore.
Hi, I'm Theodore Arenas. I'm a member of this committee, and you can call me Ted.
Okay, Ted, thank you. Dale, I see you down there.
Dale Corvino, committee member, co-chair of transportation planning as well.
Welcome, Dale. Bob Benfato. Hi, Bob.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Bob Benfato, public member of the committee.
Hi, Bob. And Frank, and then Sarah.
Hi, committee member and also co-chair of the Business Licenses and Permits Committee.
Frank. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mills. I'm on this committee and I'm also a member of our ACES committee.
Welcome, Sarah. Dolores, and then Chris.
Hi, Dolores, member also of HHHNS and this committee. And I just realized with these introductions, we have a lot of chairs of a lot of committees on this committee. Well, so that we have a lot of very knowledgeable people on the board.
Thank you. Chris. Chris LeBron, I think you're there.
No voice. Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Chris. Well, Chris LeBron is here with us. There he is. We see him now. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, committee.
He signed here.
Okay. I want to say right up front, one of the developers of the MTA site, the co-developer, is Housing Works. They will be going to the Housing and Human Services and Health Committee of the Community Board on February 17th, I believe it is. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
So questions about that component of the development should wait till the 17th and go to Joe's committee, Joe and Maria, and bring up any questions that you do have. As you remember, I hope on January 12th last month, HPD, the Housing Preservation and Development Agency, came to this land use committee with an application for proposing ULURP actions for the MTA site, which is on 9th Avenue between 54th and 55th Street. The proposal was for a 9-story mixed-use building. We've heard it before many, many times. They presented, the developer there, the co-developer presented the building and HPD proposed some action. We had a long discussion about this. And at the end of the meeting, as you recall, there was robust dismay, disagreement, unhappiness with the proposal. HPD agreed to continue the conversation after the meeting. Subsequently, the chair of the board, Jeffrey, called a meeting with HPD, and the meeting was with the chair of the land use committee, the co-chair of the housing committee, 2 members of the land use committee, and the second vice chair who lives up there on 55th Street. And we met and decided to try to come up with a proposal that we felt the community could rally around and could perhaps break the log jam and facilitate a discussion. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe or Paul, you were there, Dolores, at the initial discussion. What we thought we needed to do was refocus the discussion. Instead of talking about a supported housing site, let's talk about an affordable housing site with a supported component. And we thought that might be a way to move things along. So we came up with some proposals that we're going to present tonight. We took that to a small meeting with HPD, and HPD did not walk out of the Zoom. They actually stayed and listened, and that was a good sign. I thought, Jeffrey, did you think it was a positive reaction from HPD? He's shaking his head, yes. And then we went to the larger community, the Block Association presidents, it's from 47th to 55th Street, a wide range. And we said, this is what we're going to talk about tonight to see how we can move things along. I just want to say personally for me and for a lot of members of the community, the breaking of the trust between what was proposed, what was agreed to in the Western Rail Yards, and what we were presented with was very upsetting to a lot of us. And much to the credit of HPD, I don't know if they're with us tonight, they said, they agreed that we need to restore that trust. We need to restore a working relationship, which we had before, and which we're going to need again down the road when there's a lot of development going on 42nd Street with the Port Authority bus terminal, a lot of affordable apartments supported. So that's what we're hoping to do. Now, from that meeting that we had on January 12th, Joe and Savannah Wu, I want to give a lot of credit to Savannah Wu, who's works for the CHDC and has been so helpful to this committee and the board, drawing up this checklist of what was proposed, the actions for ULUP, what was discussed, what are possibilities to vote on or to think about. Nothing is set in stone. This is just a way to facilitate the discussion tonight. So I'm going to ask Joe to go step by step through the 6, 7, 8, 9 points and read them off. It's very important. Then we can discuss each point and see what we think about it and get to the end. And then I want to bring the community in because they can weigh in, and it's an open meeting. It's, you know, we're informal, we're frank, we say what we feel. So if that's okay, any questions at the moment? If they're not, Joe, can you,
Yeah,
Janine, can you get that?
I can
checklist?
share it. I can share it, JD. I have it up and ready. So I just want to note first that to organize our discussion for tonight, there are 10 different actions associated with these ULURPs. Some are actions within actions. So we made a grid that lists everything down. And as we go through it, I'll describe, point out, and then JD will go back and forth for discussion about them so we can get consensus on each of them. Now I need people to tell me if this is large enough and can be read. Or should I make it larger?
On a computer, I can see it fine. I think for folks on a phone, this might be difficult.
Or if you could read a lot of it off, that would help
That's
I
good.
will.
The way you have it now, the way you have
Is
it
that a
now,
better size?
I can
Okay.
read it the way you have it now.
Great. Okay. So we'll start with the first action. They're numbered 1 to 10, which is the UDAP. Let me just describe the grid. We've numbered the actions. Then we have the city's proposal, the city's stated reasons, whether the community has voiced support or not support for it, or support with changes, and then a proposed alternative actions from the community. So that will bring you through on this item by item. I need to move my numbers. Okay. So let's start with the first one. This is the city's UDAP designation in the ULURP. That's the Urban Development Action Area Plan. That is merely the mechanism, legal mechanism through which the city disposes of public property. So for this, we have noted for the community supports the UDAP designation because that enables them to dispose of the property, and there's no proposed alternative from the community. Any questions about this particular action? No? JD, I won't be able to see the whole screen. You have to tell me if you can, anyone's raising their hand, or Janine.
I don't see any raised hands. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. The next item is the disposition of development rights from the existing MTA building, roughly 35,000 square feet. And the specific description is to transfer roughly 30,000 square feet for office space to the MTA and 5,000 square feet for affordable housing space. The community agrees with the disposition of the development rights. We'll, in a moment, talk about how that gets disposed of, but we believe that there are development rights on the control center site. Sending them over to the affordable housing site does make sense, and the community would support it. Questions or thoughts about this?
I don't see any raised hands, Joe. Go ahead.
I had a quick question. So again, we're talking about just the action of allowing for the development rights, and we're going to discuss later the use of those 30,000 square feet.
That's the next item. The next item, right? This is merely the ability to transfer them. Next, we have the acquisition of a condominium for the MTA, which is the use, create a 30,000 square foot condominium. And we note here that the community does not support this action as currently configured. Our alternative is, in order to create more affordable housing, eliminate or reduce the share on-site square footage, all or in part, to relocate that facility to another site within Manhattan Community District 4. Let me just continue down and describe what that would mean. So if in fact a part of that is not sent for MTA office space, and excuse the graphic, this is the original graphic shows the ground floor here and the second floor all the way through as MTA owned condominium and the cellar. This graphic is not quite done properly. It would just be a portion of the 54th Street side and the cellar for the MTA. And we've done a rough calculation. That would bring if the second floor was removed from the MTA office use and became part of the residential building, it would create 15,000 gross square feet. There's a loss factor for public areas, things like that. That gives us 12,000, sorry, a little more, 13,000, my math's wrong, net square feet of residential area. The average apartment size is 725 square feet, which will give us 17 additional apartments. So the proposal that we would like to discuss tonight is for the MTA to remove all or part of the square footage it is using. And minimum, if we reclaim the second floor, we would get an additional 17 apartments. This is our first major point of discussion.
Dale has his hand up.
Dale, go ahead.
Joe, are you saying that there was strong community opposition to the MTA using a portion of this building for their purposes?
No, what it was is that when the issue of the use of the MTA, no one anticipated that would drive a rezoning of the entire block. And how do we get more affordable apartments here? That was the discussion that has been batted about from our meeting in January to present.
From the January meeting, I recall you having objections to the MTA using this building in the way that they saw fit.
No, Actually, no, we heard this from all the block associations.
I mean, the
JD,
meeting
speak
is,
to that.
okay, but the meeting is recorded.
As JD mentioned, there have been additional meetings since that time with the board leadership and with the block associations. And this is we came from the broader community as opposed to just, I am not a sole proponent.
So my first question was there broad opposition to this? And you said no, but now you're saying yes.
I believe here, we do not note in this document anything about broad opposition. I heard from many people in the block associations that they would like to reduce the MTA site to increase the affordable housing footprint. If I use those words, Dale, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's about the words. To be honest, at that meeting last month, it was a bit cringe to have members of this community, of this board seek to dictate terms to the MTA as to how to run their operation.
If I could add something here, Mr. Chair, is that okay for a minute?
Yes, of course, Jeffrey. And Dale, I'm sorry, Paul, you may want to weigh in because you also had, go ahead, Jeff.
Dale, just to your, I mean, this was a key thing we sort of focused on as a real way to win additional space without even having to talk about changing the building. We never really understood what the MTA need was going to be. And given that the MTA has, sold numerous real estate assets in the past couple of years, why here as well? It was not a discussion. I didn't think we were approached telling the MTA what they could and couldn't do. They already run the system, from the site just to the east of this. And so this was about using our state leverage to actually gain square footage to then develop units in the income bands that were committed to us. And that's really the thrust of how we were approaching the discussion, especially on the MTA square footage, in the building, not necessarily the basement.
Right, understood. Still, I think there's a bad taste left when this committee is seeking to dictate terms to the MTA. If you're making suggestions or if you're putting out a negotiating point, that's one thing. But there were some full cringe moments, in my view, when members of this committee sought to dictate how the MTA should run their operations. And that's all.
I would say again, we're not talking about how they run their operations whatsoever. The MTA, we are in this position today because the MTA came to this community seeking an upzoning of the Western rail yards in order to derive a great amount of income for the operations and for the capital projects of the transit authority. That's what they have done. And this was a agreement in 2009 on how the site would be developed. We have never in this discussion ever supported our board on record for 30,000 square feet to be used at this location. We certainly did not support 30,000 square feet for part of it, which is office space, which would then create a huge zoning precedent for our district. This is really not about anything about MTA operations. We're talking about the real estate deal here and trying to make the real estate deal work for the affordable housing without affecting the community greatly. This is a discussion with the MTA. It is not about, it's not a diktat. You can do this or not do this. If you felt concerned about that, I understand that. But it's really
I understand there were concerns about the zoning exceptions and to narrow them to the degree possible to make it specific only to this site. But that's another matter than saying like, we object to you having any space in this building whatsoever. When they, in the meeting last month, they seemed to say they needed space in the building for their operational purposes in the building next door.
Actually,
so again,
no.
Like you specifically said, hey, you just got $6 billion from the state. Like, why don't you just like?
I have to clarify. They do not need operational space in this building. They need office space. They're relocating out of the current
office space in support of their operation next door.
Right. They did not make any case to us why this had to be at this location. We did not get any information about that. Again, I don't want to debate back and forth. I'm putting this out there. I want to hear from the community.
Dale, you raise a good point. It was my recollection that all we wanted to do was to talk with the MTA to see if it were possible to free up some space that they might not need, but certainly you're right, we should not dictate, and I don't think we did. I think we just wanted to open a discussion to see if it were possible. So we can talk about that later. I cannot see raised hands, but
Leslie has his hand raised.
Leslie.
Yes, I have a quick question. Does this change, Joe, means that the rezoning does not happen? I mean, how does this fit with the issue about the rezoning?
By moving the MTA off the second floor, it takes away any need to deal with additional commercial square footage. Yes, Leslie, it has a direct impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Joe, go ahead.
Actually, I have my hand up and also Brian does.
Sorry, Dolores,
okay.
keep
So-
telling me that because I can't see everybody, so go ahead.
Sorry. So I just wanted to address Dale's point, and Dale is 100% right. We should never be telling any agency what they should be doing. However, a lot of the conversations that have been happening prior to this presentation of what was finally brought to the public of what they're trying to certify, what they've certified, MTA had never expressed a specific need in this space. And the original agreements were about this being 100% affordable. So we start from there. And then as it changed and it morphed, this addition of saying MTA is going to use space. But in a lot of the informal meetings that happened in the past year and a half, when Lowell was chair, and even I believe in one of the meetings since Jeffrey's been chair, the MTA didn't really articulate a concrete need for the space in this site. And I think that's really key, because as was highlighted in this suggestion, is that we could offer other spaces within our district for MTA to use that could be convenient. And it's our real goal, at least I think our real goal that the entire community shares, is to get as much affordable housing as possible in our community. And that, I believe, is consistent across the many, many months that we've talked about, not just this site, but also the DEP site, is to get as much affordability as possible. So, but Dale, you're right. We should not be telling agencies how they should be operating.
So is that swap? Is that swap in these set of terms? Is that
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it says, I think from the right up before, it said by locating, yeah, there it goes.
eliminate
Yeah,
or reduce
absolutely. By locating all or part of the facility
to another
site.
site within C? Got it. Okay.
Right,
Thanks.
because we absolutely believe we have to help them figure that out. It's similar to
Okay.
when we relocated the
I would
police.
just- I would just be wary
fish
of.
table.
I would just be wary of some of the language that was put out last month, which I thought was overreach.
Thank you, Dale. Brian.
Thank you. I'm just to clarify, so I'm understanding this point. By doing this, it will reduce the footprint of the MTA within the proposed site, or it will eliminate the MTA within the proposed site. And that in turn enables us to get approximately 17 more units of affordable housing and not require rezoning. Is that all correct?
Yes, specifically, it's either eliminate or reduce. I gave an example of a reduction here,
Okay.
which says if the second floor is reduced and relocated for office space elsewhere in our district, here's the square footage that will become available, here's the net, here's how many units, and that's 17.
Okay, and is it, and so what we looked at is both variants, a reduction or a complete elimination. But
all I was able to do for this discussion was to give the example if it's the second floor. The ground
Right.
floor does not have an increase in units that would just make the supermarket more viable.
right, and so what the MTA was originally looking at was some cellar space, portion of the first floor and the second floor condominiums is more.
That's what has been proposed. Until we saw
Okay.
these plans, the community board had never been informed as to the configuration. So we've been working in the dark for a number of years now. That's been the problem. Normally we would see this way in advance.
Right, but one of the great benefits of this adjustment would be it enables us to bypass needing rezoning. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And
There was
then-
no need.
and-
Second floor commercial use is driving the rezoning.
Okay, gotcha. And when this was floated to the various block associations, they were comfortable with this. Is that correct?
Yes.
The community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Joe.
Smallwood from has his hand up. I'm bringing him over.
Where's
Who's
the hand
that?
up?
John Smallwood and the attendees. He had his hand up.
No, but that's the public. Aren't we gonna do the committee first?
Are we doing committee first? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's do the committee first and then we'll go to the public as soon as we get through this.
It was just a quick question on, are you taking questions from the public as we do each point, or are you waiting for us to comment at the end?
We were gonna wait till the end, John. Is it a clarification of something?
No, I just want to make sure. I just was trying to understand the process. Thank you.
We'd like to wait if that's okay with you, John.
Yeah, by the time we get through 10, I just want to make sure everybody remembers when we go back to 2. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
So-
Go ahead, Joe.
Going to number 4. The next action is to rezone the block from West 53rd to 54th, 150 feet west of 8th Avenue from R8 C15 to C62 commercial zone. The notice, the City of New York said to us, it's proposed to create more commercial floor area for the MTA office condo. It would permit second story commercial use, and it would reflect the land use of the block and make the MTA's facilities a conforming use. They noted that they would not increase the FAR, would stay at the R8 FAR in the preservation area 4.2. So the community does not support this action. This action is not needed for the feasibility of the affordable housing project. Residential use is permitted as of right, along with ground floor commercial. The MTA is not the applicant and has not requested a rezoning of its control center. If and when it requires a rezoning, it should go through a standard, separate, publicly transparent ULURP process and not benefit from this affordable housing project through this dramatic change from residential to commercial. Midtown North Precinct, which is part of the rezoning, and Midtown Community Court are existing uses, and they are conforming uses. That means just because they're there, a police precinct is allowable in a residential zone. The court building has been there since 1906. It is not a non-conforming use. It exists, and they have a funny name. They're called conforming non-conforming uses. The community alternative action is only actions needed to produce the affordable housing regarding no rezoning action, only actions needed to produce the affordable housing on the MTA site. And a further note that anything needed to accommodate the proposed 30,000 square feet or any reduced amount for commercial use for the MTA should be handled via mayoral zoning override, which is then specific just to this project for a specific use. Questions or thoughts?
Any hands up, Janine? No?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, Joe,
Okay.
go ahead.
Our next item is and here's what's going to get a little complicated. These are the ULURP items. These are the text items. This is a zoning text amendment to establish new provisions, a new special permit under 96-112, a new section to modify lot coverage, meaning you can cover more of the lot and with the building and have a lesser rear yard. The community does not support this action. The building typology in Clinton is predominantly all law tenements on 25 to 100 foot lots. Many buildings are 80 to 90 feet deep with rear yards of only 10 to 15 feet. New buildings, except on the avenue, must have a 30-foot rear yard. These provisions for lot coverage and yard regulations were established to ensure that new construction would not further compromise light and air of adjacent tenements. The community's alternative proposal, and I want you to look at these words very carefully because we try to make this as clear as possible, is to create extremely limited zoning text amendments to 96-102 and 96-103 to permit greater lot coverage and lesser yards, that is, to enable this project to move ahead, with restrictive language applicable only to affordable housing development on publicly owned land. But here's the key: adjacent to a mass transit or water supply support facility. So we are grabbing DEP and MTA at the same time in a very narrow way. You have to find another mass transit or water support supply facility in our district. That's going to be very hard. So thoughts or questions about this alternative text?
Dale has his hand up.
Dale,
So
go ahead.
this would in essence be it's general language, but it's so specific that it's basically this site and this site only.
And that's how we've done this before in other affordable housing developments. There is one for Fountain House on 47th Street, Dale, that says for a publicly supported project under section 202 of the federal blah, 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 this can happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's that sort of like, it's tailored to make the project happen as opposed to a district-wide change.
Right. Could it conceivably be applied to the site on the other side of the MTA facility?
The answer is yes, but that would mean demolishing the police station.
It'll be the court.
and-
It would be demolishing the court. That's the
Okay,
next.
so
No, yeah,
practically it doesn't.
the court is a landmark, can't be
Yeah, so
demolished.
practically it's not going to happen. Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Dale. Joe,
Other questions?
No one else.
Okay. The next item is, and this is about, we do not want this wider precedent being created at all. The next item now is height and setback. This is there was the zoning text amendment to establish the permit, and then there's the permit itself. So we are proposing do not make changes on this new section 96-112. Instead, make changes to 96-104 or 96-102, whatever you need to do, only to facilitate the affordable housing developments at the DEP and MTA sites. It sounds like it's the same thing, but it's actually two separate actions. They have to comment on it separately. Questions or thoughts?
No hands.
Okay. Now, this is the most unbelievably the most complicated part. And I'll put up a graphic on the screen to show it to everybody. Just 1 second. I need to show you a different image to explain this discussion. I'll go through it first and then show you the image. Okay, so there are 3 separate areas of the building where there is a requirement for a special permit. I'm going to stop this share and do another one in order to show you the building. There we go. Can everyone see this image? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So the special permit allows for height to go from 66 feet to 99 feet, which is part of our agreement in Western Rail Yards. And that is included here and on 9th Avenue. However, this asks for additional changes. It asks not only for height, but not to have a setback on 9th Avenue and not to have a setback on a portion of West 54th Street. That was not in the original agreement. It was never even thought that there would not be a request for a setback. What this means is that in 2009, when the community board worked with Amanda Burden and the Planning Commission, for the first time, we established a height limit on 9th Avenue. And the height limit was now 99 feet and a setback at 66 feet to mimic the height of tenements along 9th Avenue. So we avoided the issue of the Nicole, where development rights were grabbed up and an 18-story building built on 9th Avenue. The request here is very specific, and I'm going to point to it and mention it's this section here, and it's this section here. I'm going to turn the other document and come back. And I'm sorry, it's a little bit back and forth. There we go. So the first action is an 85-foot height on 9th Avenue without the required setback. Our proposed position, we support the 99-foot overall height only with the required setback at the 66-foot height. to max the tenements along 9th Avenue, and then request the developer to redistribute that bulk to other parts of the building within the 99 feet. So we're not cutting down the number of affordable apartments or use, just redistribute it. So let's talk about that first. And I'm talking specifically about the portion on 9th Avenue. And I'm going to put that up again so you guys can see it, because this is where we're going to get lost. You know, look at it. So we're talking just about this portion, which is in the middle of the building's facade on 9th Avenue. That a portion of this would go up here, set further back. So we'd maintain that height, which you see up and down 9th Avenue at the 66 feet. Questions or thoughts about this?
Dale?
Yeah, I saw somewhere you said the setback dimension is specified at 10 feet.
Yes, it is. That's what they're asking for a variance from.
And feasibly, those would feasibly become terrace units.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
See, Dale, it actually says that there's no setback which is required. Any
Yeah,
questions?
that refers to the current proposal.
That the current proposal,
Yeah.
right? We would ask
Right.
them to take this square footage and redistribute it somewhere here.
Right. Okay.
Other questions?
No one else.
Okay, I'm going to the next one, which is another technical piece. Here we go. Okay, now we're talking about West 54th Street. And that is past 100 feet of 9th Avenue versus this next one, which is within 100 feet east of 9th Avenue. So let's go back. Stop this share, open this up again. Here we are. We're talking now about the area in blue right here. So now we're outside of the 9th Avenue zone, as you see when you walk down 9th Avenue. And we would agree that we agree with this, that this goes straight up to 99 feet. Questions or thoughts on this?
No hands.
Okay. I'll go to the last one. This is within 100 feet east of 9th Avenue. The board requests the developer work with CB4 to limit the section without the required 10-foot setback at the 66-foot height, given the context of the building to the north. I'm going to put that up so you can see what it looks like. We'll get a better idea. So here's a Google Street View. It turns out the tenement to the north is not the normal 5 stories, it's 6 stories, but it actually is close to 75 feet. So therefore, we'd like to work with them to try to redistribute bulk around, not have the full setback eliminated, but part of it. And we would do that because this building is actually taller than the normal 5-story building. You can see that it really reads larger than other tenements on 9th Avenue. If you turn down 9th Avenue, you can see the 9th Avenue tenements in general are much lower. They don't have that additional story at all. Let me stop the share and come back and go back to the document. So therefore, within the 9th Avenue zone, 100 feet east of 9th Avenue, to work with us not to not have this come the full amount, but a portion of this, figure out a way to make this less. So when you're walking down 9th Avenue, you see a lower building setting back and then going up. So maybe this gets cut off a little bit. I know this has been the most complicated part. So yes, go ahead, please, Laura.
So bottom line, and the key here is, again, because we're looking for the most amount of affordability, the counterpoint that we're making is that you can still keep the same amount of square footage throughout this entire project for the maximum amount of affordable housing. But if we do not take these actions, we will conform to a good amount of the contextual building within the area and not disturb as much the surrounding neighbors by changing the height and that creating that uniformity that will block a little bit more of the air and light from some of the nearby neighbors. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
and it's about the principle of not doing no harm, but doing less harm in certain areas and making sure we don't set precedent. I will also note These changes may mean they have to do some internal reconfiguration, which may mean the unit mix might change, but that's up to the developer to come back to us so we can evaluate it and discuss it.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you,
and so I
Delores.
just wanted to just state that, not because I live on this block, but more so because I believe that what this does is creates the least amount of disruption. But also the biggest thing is that it's going to not take away potentially any of the affordability of the project. So I think it's a very sound compromise.
Thanks, Dolores. Leslie, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah,
Question?
I think it may have been answered, but the question I had was about the redistribution of the new apartments in the building, and how will they be divvied out in terms of affordability? The
We're getting to that
restructuring, basically.
That's the very last item, Leslie,
Okay,
because that is the most controversial to figure out.
okay.
Thank you, Leslie. Go ahead, Joe.
So now so that's a special permit. Now we're down to facade design. And the leadership group of the board, from listening to the community, from the public meeting and subsequent discussions, it's window layout, building entrance, ground floor storefronts, and facade materials. We note that the community does not support the current facade design and requests modifications. Now here, we haven't gone much further because we have to talk to the developer. We're asking them to considering the following items. Window layout. Create a rhythm of repeating window layouts similar to tenements in the preservation area, especially along 9th Avenue. Building entrance. Create a residential scaled entrance to eliminate double height. Ground floor storefronts. Provide details on the layout of the ground floor storefronts to recreate the feel of multiple storefronts on 9th Avenue. I will note that the Housing Committee did this with the project on 22nd and 7th, and it was very successful. Even though there could be larger storefronts, they appear to be smaller storefronts tied together to give more of the sense of the character of the neighborhood. The last is facade materials. Choose a brick more consistent with brick color and masonry materials surrounding the MTA site. All of these things would have normally have come to the land use committee and to briefing meetings prior. We could have given the owners, the developers, direction how to go and how not to go. We've never seen a facade walk in the community board's office that doesn't get changed. So this is the first go. We've been very, very busy in everything else. And that's the issue we have here, that we haven't been able to focus on it.
Thanks. I think Dale has his hand up. Dale?
Yeah. Okay. So window layout. Yeah, I noticed that they had a staggered window layout, almost like, like a line of cars and traffic on one of the streets. It also, I think that's an amazing design proposition. I also like the idea that currently they have corner window units for some of these apartments, and what you're directing them to do as a design proposition is a grid of windows, like you could call it contextual. You could also, can we go back to the list though?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was gonna put the image up for a second.
Yeah. So I personally do not have an objection to a well-executed staggered window design. Also,
so there are no corner windows here, Dale.
How is that's not a corner window?
No, that's a panel.
That is not the window?
Nope. The windows are here.
Oh, I see. The window is like the grayish shade, and then that's like a
I think it's some kind of panel or maybe a different color brick.
Okay, well, in that case,
I agree with you. Corner windows.
Their proposition is a kind of a fake proposition. Like, I thought those were ribbons of windows and not, it's almost half panel.
Yes, the windows are black. Everything else is panel or brick. Right.
I would just go with something that's more along the lines of like rethink the fenestration. Also, I thought you were saying last month that you wanted a 2-story lobby entrance.
No.
You want a 1-story lobby entrance?
Well, again, the idea is for the building to be contextual and part of the neighborhood. We do not really have many 2-story entrances along 9th Avenue or right off the avenue. We just don't.
I mean, I think that's hewing to context a little too. I I don't know. I personally, if I lived in this building, I'd rather walk into a 2-story entrance than a 1-story entrance.
Understood.
What else do you have as design guidelines?
Provide
Storefront
details on the layout of the storefronts to recreate the feel of multiple storefronts, so it's not one
and
storefront.
facade. Yeah, the materials. Obviously, they whiffed on the materials. So yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Dale. Brian, hello?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment to Dale. The windows are actually in a grid layout. What they've done is they put these bands around the windows into alternating groups of detail layout. So it's sort of, that's what we're commenting on, is that these weird strips and bands are.
Yeah, I figured that out for myself.
Yeah.
I figured that out once I saw the panels, Brian. Thanks, though.
Right. Okay. So I agree that if those were all glass, that might be something kind of interesting, but they're not. It's just a grid, and they've undermined the grid with their window.
We actually, in this discussion, might ask for more windows. I think buildings like this, the more open it is to the outside, the better you're going to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that I know that it's panels, it's actually a pretty dark facade for a residential.
Yeah.
I literally thought those were bands of windows, like with some illustration of, like, you know, whatever curtains or what have you behind them. I did not realize those were solid panels.
I think the design behind that was to give the illusion that those were greater senses of windows, but but when we, it's that rendering versus reality, and when we see it in reality, gosh, that's an ugly facade.
Especially when there are no corner window units.
No corner window units.
I mean, this whole
committee.
The whole premise.
I'm sorry.
The whole premise of this design as what it's the design that it suggests without actually achieving would be that you would have like a ribbon effect of the windows, and it would wrap a corner, so it would give more openness than compared to like tenement type of fenestration. So yeah, this is fake, and I don't like it.
Thank you, Dale.
I second that.
Thank you, Brian.
Don't move, Dale.
Chris, you have your hand up.
I'm testing my microphone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's number one. Yeah, so traditionally when we sit through reviews such as this, we'll work hand in hand with Housing and Health. Mostly, Joe is president on both, president, and so is JD on both committees. And what we're doing is looking to improve the living scenario from the initial design that's generally presented to us. And so, wraparound band windows is something that would improve like a living situation. This is very common, this particular design, in places where they have like commercial zoning, like in Williamsburg and Greenpoint, where there is, generally speaking, just no review process they have as of right, and they build. And so we have an opportunity here, not to push back, but to guide, best practices to ensure that whoever's living in here in these affordable apartments has the best life. Second, my question to Joe is, if we do a 2-story entrance, do we lose any of our proposed 14 apartments that we're asking for?
If we extend the entrance to single story, we'll probably gain some space in at least an apartment. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions about this? Go ahead, Joe. I think we can move to the next
I have one
item.
question.
Leslie has them.
Oh, sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry, Leslie.
No problem. My concern, and I worry about affordable places to shop for the community. We used to have Styles Supermarket or vegetable store on 52nd Street.
We're coming to that next.
Okay, because as you know, that collapsed, and we didn't have a place that's affordable in the neighborhood. And we really do need something for the elderly and for those younger people who like to eat. I mean, to get something that's affordable, and there isn't anything in the neighborhood, and we really need to focus in on that.
Before we go to number 9, which is what Leslie just spoke about, Janine, could you please send out the work that the Housing, Health, Human Services Committee did on 201 7th Avenue and 22nd Street? Because that'll give an idea of where we started versus where we ended up with Facade. It became a much nicer building, both inside and out. Commercial space use. So here, the note is the community supports a grocery store supermarket at this location for the entire commercial space. If it's not the entire commercial space, we're not going to be able to get enough square footage to attract exactly what Leslie talked about, some sort of affordable food use. If it's chopped up or ever, we have to get the entire space. And that would be what we would do. Thoughts or questions about that?
What's the ballpark square footage on the retail envelope?
I think it's like, I'll go to the presentation. Dale, give me 1 second. I'll look at it and get right back to you, okay?
In the meantime, Chris, you have your hand up, and then Leslie. Chris?
Thank you, JD. So with regard to affordable, what research has been done to see what potential affordable storefronts or grocery stores can go in there that are known on the west side? From my knowledge, the only thing that would be quote unquote affordable is Trader Joe's. Has there been any research or exploration into a partnership with a grocery co-op that already exists, for instance, like the one in Park Slope?
We've asked the developer to report back to us on this. We have not heard anything specific at all, Chris. And part of this is just making it clear what we want, right? Which is the issue. Yeah.
I suspect the retail envelope is too small for a Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm trying to get to the later representation to say how much square footage is what.
Not that I'm proposing
I get it.
Trader Joe's, yeah.
I mean, it would
just
be
something
great,
truly
but
affordable, yeah.
I think they tend to like bigger footprints than what this building is going to provide.
It is it's 7,100 square feet on the ground floor, 2,800 in the cellar. So approximately 10,000 square feet.
So
that would not be sufficient for a Trader Joe's.
So you said 7,100 on the ground level.
And 2,800 below.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Joe, I think we can move on now.
Hold on a second. I'm sorry, I have to unshare again, close something.
While you're doing that, Joe, I'll just comment in terms of asking about research on affordable grocery stores. That may be something as an extracurricular activity, even though we are going to leave it to the developer. Lidl and Aldi's have opened up in areas around Manhattan and other boroughs. Those are certainly affordable, and their footprint is sometimes smaller than a Trader Joe's. So might be something to find out if this area of Manhattan may be of interest to those two affordable types of grocery outlets.
We're now to number 10, which is the income band mix. Currently, there are 94 apartments in the development. There's 112 apartments total, 94 apartments for folks between 40 and 60% AMI. But actually, there's 103 apartments for folks between 0 to 79% AMI. Clearly, we have not hit the moderate middle income group. The city stated that there's a need for supportive housing. The community's position so far: the community does not support the proposed AMI mix and request modifications. As part of the Western Railroad rezoning, it was agreed that there was to be between 80 and 165. The mayor and the city council memorialized it in this WRY points of agreement, December 10th, 2009. Here's the part that I think people have to understand, because I looked at the proposal very carefully. It's 103 of the 107 of the 112 units that are between 0 and 70% of AMI. That's the current proposal on the table. So we're talking all of 9 that are 80% AMI. 67 of those 103 apartments are reserved for homeless referrals from the Department of Homeless Services. We have gotten this clarified from HPD. There is no question in a supportive housing development of this nature that it must be 60% of the total units, 67 apartments for homeless referrals. So we're looking at a compromise position. And I want to take us through this slowly, but specifically. First, the city restated its commitment to the MTA site. It's an affordable housing development for moderate middle income households. MCB4 would support no more than 25% of the apartments at below 80% of AMI under the following conditions. 75% have income bands between 80 and 165, the exact mix to be determined. 25% of the lower income apartments between 0 and 79%, and the 0 is people will have subsidies, so if they have no income, they won't pay any rent portion, to be supportive housing with adequate social service support, with tenants referred from the DHS shelter system. There'd be no income gaps, also known as donut holes in the income bands for the entire project, including the lower income bands. And most important from the housing committee's end, that all income bands be fully integrated on all floors and exposures throughout the entire building. We don't want to see any segregation here by income at all.
Joe, that's terrific. This is going to be some discussion. I think, Paul, start us off.
Thanks, JD and Joe. Joe, again, and Savannah, thanks for all the work on this spreadsheet. It's incredible. Two thoughts on this income band discussion. I clearly support the idea of having no more than 25% below 80%. I think that's a good strategy for us to follow. Joe, you mentioned in the list that the lowest income bands housing would be referrals from DHS. The politicization of this project has turned into a discussion about housing for people with HIV and AIDS and longtime survivors of HIV and AIDS. There is no mention of that in this spreadsheet. And now I think that's a combination of DHS is actually not committing to that, and that by having Housing Works, they may accommodate more people with HIV and AIDS. But I think that we may want to push on that a little bit. Like if they are going to do supportive housing, they should make a commitment to longtime survivors of HIV and AIDS and not have it just be any DHS referral out of any shelter. So
we can actually say in this, we can say, refer from, there will be HASA eligible individuals, HASA meaning the AIDS Services Agency, from the shelter system, because it is possible in supportive housing projects to have layers of categorical eligibility. And I think that's something we can easily put in here after we have our discussion.
Thanks, because I do think if they, and I have 2 points on this, JD, so that's my first, and Joe, I appreciate us figuring out a way to, they have politicized this development against us and made us take a position that makes us sound like we're against long-term housing for people with HIV and AIDS, and now they're the ones that aren't putting it in. So I think if we include it, it strengthens our position some. And the second thing is just, and I defer to you, Joe, many more decades of experience in supportive housing. Do we want to insist that the supportive housing residents who are most in need of support are spread out to upper floors and things like that? Do we want them to have more direct access to the offices of support rather than having them spread around the building? And that's, I'm honestly asking that question. I don't know the answer.
In my professional experience, integration is the way to go. People are models to each other. You don't know who is who, and elevators take you to wherever you got to go, in a building like this. It really helps to have people integrated.
All right, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Good questions, Chris, and then Dan.
Thank you, Chair. So Paul brought up a great point. We need to make sure we know that we do have a large population of New Yorkers living with HIV/AIDS in this community. So asking for the HASA referrals is great. The breakdown of 25-75, this can be interpreted broadly because there still is a 15% social housing requirement. So it could be interpreted as the rest of the 85%, the 25% and 75% of the 85% fall into, 25% goes into below 80% AMI, and then the following 75 fits into the bands with no donut hole. So ultimately, if someone was interpreting this in the city, they can say, hey, we're getting 40% below 80 AMI. So is there a logic to push back on that, or is there
Chris,
language that we can use?
In our meeting with HPD, they asked this very question, and we again made it clear it's 25% of the total. Whatever we need to do to clarify the language in our eventual letter, we have to do, because we're very clear it's two things: 25% below between 0 and 79% AMI, and that same 25% are the homeless referrals. So we have to make that clear. I agree.
Thank you, Chris. Dale.
Okay, a couple of questions. In their proposal, they were proposing Housing Works administer the units, the apartments. Would that have applied to the HASA referrals as well? They would have been essentially clients of Housing Works?
So how it works in supportive housing, Housing Works will not administer the apartments. They are providing the social services to the tenants. Housing Works still is in this project no matter what, and they will provide social services to the DHS clients no matter what.
So, and they would have been providing social services to the HASA referrals as well?
Yes. Well,
so the HASA referrals would have had to been qualified as people living with HIV/AIDS?
The HASA referrals are actually people living with HIV/AIDS, but in a meeting the board had with the Assistant Commissioner for Supportive Housing, Housing Works stated they would be people living in our community as referrals. The commissioner responded that they would have to be DHS referrals from the shelter system. That's why we're using this language. And if that can be worked out differently, that's fine. But through our knowledge right now, these are shelter referrals. And then another layer, as Paul has brought on, HASA eligible shelter referrals. There are many people in the shelter system who are HASA.
Okay. And then in what this proposes, 25%, so that would be about 25 units, or how many units would that be? That would be below.
I'll give you the number right now. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
$28.
So 28 units in this building would be supportive units. And
with social services.
Right. And we've talked about like what it takes, like scale, what it takes to be practical. In your mind, is that a practical number for a supportive project?
I have worked with projects that go down to like 28, 30. Sure.
So it's the low end.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say so in years past, Dale, supportive housing developments were not large. Under the de Blasio administration, they become 200, 250 units. And that kind of support services really requires a lot of skilled operators, like breaking ground. You don't have, on one hand, you have those citywide. And what I've noticed is a lot from the professional end, a lot of groups have scaled this up and the services don't follow.
Right.
Quality.
And as an operator, Housing Works, their current projects are in what range? Like how many units? Are they similar sized? Are they 40, 50, 100?
I don't know, but we should ask them that when they come to Housing Health Human Services to get that detail.
Yeah.
From them.
Because it seems a little low, but it also seems like a baseline. Like it wouldn't be any less. Maybe it'll be a couple more in a compromise, but yeah. Okay.
Chris.
Thank you, Joe. So last question with regards to HASA. So when we've sat on these meetings before, there have been arguments about, or rather not arguments, but points made about finding reasonable housing for individuals in their 50s and 60s who are long-term survivors. Obviously, living in walk-ups is very difficult for a long-term survivor of HIV/AIDS. Would HASA include anybody in the senior demographic category, or could we expand a little bit there so that way it's a little bit larger in inclusivity?
My answer is that would be something that to be negotiated with HPD and DHS, because how these developments work, there's a referral protocol that's executed as part of a regulatory agreement for each development, and it says you can take people from category A, B, C, or D. So until we hear differently from HPD, that these will not be solely DHS referrals with a HASA overlay. We don't know that. We have to ask that. We should ask that at the Housing Health Human Services Committee.
Okay, and I bring that up because largely from what I've heard in community meetings is there's no pushback on the long-term survivor portion of the social housing. And so I want to make sure that like when we communicate that in Housing, Health, and Human Services, that we are verbally overly supportive of ensuring that this is, you know, a need fulfilled.
Chris, in years past, I have done projects with a category called housing needy, and that actually meant to reach that group. Folks who have other social service issues, they are not homeless, but they are needy because they cannot maintain where they are. So again, we have to ask the HPD and DHS how to do this, because that's not what's currently proposed.
So we have a history of doing it. You have a history of doing it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Dolores, and then I want to get to the public before we lose sight of all we've been discussing. Dolores, go ahead.
So I would just want to just be on record to say, I think that this suggestion is a great suggestion, mainly because, again, and I know I'm repeating myself, we had expected this to be a 100% affordable project. I think we also, because of the board proactive stance from decades ago, looked at bringing moderate and middle income bands back into the neighborhood by asking that they go up to 165 as we originally were looking for, and that we integrate. I think that what we do is we maintain the balance that we're so desperately looking for within this community. So I think this is a great proposal. I really hope that HPD can see the merit in it and recognize that this could be a model for how we can really maintain a commitment to not just affordable housing, but also take care of that particular need that we have at the moment, which is that we do happen to have folks that do need housing, that don't have housing, that are in our shelter system. And this is a great compromise. But I also just, JD, if I could, I just wanted to get, I know that there's been only a few of us that have been talking, and there's some of us that have been on this committee for a very long time. Bob, obviously, having been district manager, and Frank, just wondering whether they had any thoughts, because I'm just curious. I wasn't, unfortunately, at last month's meeting, so I'm sorry to call out people, but just wondering, Frank or Bob, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, Dolores, we'll get to that, but I really want to go to the public because they've been waiting patiently, and then Bob and can weigh in later, if that's okay, Dolores. Chris,
JD,
you have your hand. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, JD, I just wanted to note the board also asked me to prepare for people's broader context. Other supported housing developments the board has supported recently between 2019 and 2021. And I want to note we have 3 locations: Hartley House, 413 West 46th, 454 West 35th Street, which is preservation and expansion, and the Slaughterhouse site. In total, in the last 3 years, we have supported 164 units of supportive housing, the absolute majority of which are 50% or 60% of AMI. So this couples with our work here. That's why we're looking to balance things back and forth. And then the last piece I wanted to show everybody, that's the map of where those are: Hartley, Slaughterhouse, and 35th Street. Wow. And then go down. Here are the AMIs. You can see this. The 30% of AMI up to 165% of AMI. You can see the range is quite large. Please remember, when housing development, affordable housing developments are done, the AMI may be at a higher number, but the rents are set at a percentage lower to make them affordable to a broader range of people. When we ask for eliminate the donut hole, that means we're saying have this range of rents and know that there's highs and lows, but you can fit somewhere in between. And the last piece are the rents. So for a studio, when you're at 40% of AMI, $598 a month, up to 165, $28.89 a month. Or for a 1-bedroom, $756 up to $36.21. And we know for a fact that 1-bedrooms in our neighborhood start at least at $3,800 or $3,900. So this is still competitive. When we get to the incomes, Dolores noted that there are many civil servants, 2-income people. If you have 2 people working, each making $60,000, they quickly hit into this 165 AMI band. So I want just to share that in general as the background and the undergirding of what we're trying to accomplish. I'll take this down, JD, and you can go to the comments, right?
Just terrific, Joe. Thank you. And Savannah, thank you so much. This is so helpful. I want to go to the public out there. John Smallwood, I hope you remembered all the points. I think you had a question about point 4. You're still with us. So, John Smallwood, are you with us?
Bringing him over now.
Not, okay, thank you. And then Christine Gorman after that. There you are, John. Can you hear us, John? You're muted. Have we lost John?
Nope,
There
nope,
he is.
right here.
Okay.
Okay, so I thought it would be interesting to start off with, it's now been 3 years since I, on a, actually I think it was on Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2019, that I emailed Jesse a press release from HPD saying that they were going to, they announced the development teams for these 2 projects. And obviously in that press release, we saw that they were going against what was originally promised to the community in terms of the type of units, that there would be supportive housing and such. And I bring that up because, you know, I quite frankly, I've probably been more involved in this than anyone else. And, you know, because I live across the street from this and I have a background in affordable housing, I have a background in development. And quite frankly, I'm just perplexed that we're still working off no plans. I mean, I haven't seen a plan. I haven't seen anything from any of the supportive housing providers. It keeps changing. It was supposed to be originally for long-term survivors of HIV. And now I'm hearing on this call that now we're talking about formerly homeless. And so it's really hard for me to give really concrete comments on any of this. But having said that, a couple things is if we do go with the proposal to shift the square footage from office to residential, one is I think your 15% loss factor is a little light, but leaving that aside, would that allow us to reduce the height of the building? Because then it looks like, but actually let me back up. Did they change architects? Because Central Ruddy would have never allowed that sketch that you had up there as the presentation for the building. I mean, that looks like something somebody, like one of the board members announced, looks like something that you would, you know, industrial building, you know, that some, you know, I don't know. I'm not doing a good job describing what kind of architect would put together. But anyway, I mean, that plan, they flashed that at their last presentation and we had asked for a copy of that. And so this is the first time I'm seeing it back again. But that bulk looks really redistributed versus what was originally presented to the community and to local people. So I would ask that here, I guess I'll leave it at this. You know, I see this as, I appreciate everything that the community board's doing for us. But I feel like at this point, you know, without HPD or developer really coming back to us with concrete stuff, whether it's on the supportive housing or the supportive housing component, or whether it's on the building plans, that this is really going to go down to us going back to our city council members and just saying, look, you know, it's been 3 years and they haven't told, you know, they haven't had any community engagement. They've reached out to our community board and such. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So just for information, John, the community board did receive the plans. Jesse can put them in a Dropbox. You can look at them. We got that like a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I don't want it just to be for me. I think, you know, anyone.
No. I'm saying for general use. The point of it is that normally the process, we can't correct the process that didn't happen. We would have sat down with renderings, plans, programs for over a year and gone back and forth. That's the normal thing with the ULURP. If you remember, someone represented from HPD, we would not have plans in the ULURP. I mean, that was bizarre. I think we've gotten past that. And I will say that in the meeting Community Board 4 had with HPD just last week, we did see, and I'll be very clear, a tone change in wanting to figure something out. That does not mean we're going to get to where we want to go, but it means at least we have a partner for discussion. And I agree with you. We normally would see much more detailed facade drawings, real things. But the bottom line is we're here today. We got to go someplace. So that's all we can do.
I did have one question on the, were you anticipating a redistribution of the height? Is that the way I was interpreting what you're proposing?
Redistribution of bulk staying within the limit of the height.
Okay, because it's still unclear to me what they're building in the area past 100 feet. So I'd be interested in looking at your plans, and then I can provide comments separately.
Great.
Or as a separate venue. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Christine Gorman, welcome. Can
Thank
you hear
you.
us, Christine?
Yes. So I'm here as the president of the West 55th Street Block Association. I start from the premise that the city has broken a promise to us. And this is something that I want to make clear. When you break that trust, why should I trust anything that comes from HPD after this? You can talk about a compromise, but what if, I mean, they could tear that up, in another administration or in another few years. So I just want to make that very clear. And I'm not convinced that we should compromise, or offer do their work for them. But having said that, if this is the compromise, I think you've done a pretty good job. I would not go any further. I would not move any further than what you've outlined. I think absolutely that we on West 55th Street would love to see more of the 30,000 square feet of the MTA office space for affordable housing. That sort of takes care of a lot of things at once, from the not creating a new zoning loophole. As you know, people take advantage of any little change in zoning in unexpected ways. Somebody mentioned the Nicole. It's amazing what is legal. And we're always sort of whack-a-moling on these things. So we're on record as not agreeing with the zoning changes proposed by HPD to accommodate the second floor commercial. We do need as much affordable housing as possible in Hell's Kitchen. And I want to underscore that we need it for families in particular, and the elderly or seniors. And once again, originally it looked like it was a lot of studios. Studios are not, that conducive for families. I want to make sure that we highlight that. The other thing is, this is a minor thing, minor in some ways, but because we've been so focused on the fact that the promise has been broken and the trust has been broken, but people in West 55th Street Block Association just today, when we met on this, described the design as brutalist and Stalinist. So I just wanted to be clear and on the record that we really despise the design and it does not fit into the neighborhood. I don't want that to be the only point of focus, but just for the record, it's a very brutal design and doesn't fit with the neighborhood. Absolutely should be HASA, HIV/AIDS services eligible. And I will say that we've looked at Housing Works and the house, they're more known for their thrift shops, but we've looked at some of their housing, supportive housing programs. And I don't have it right to hand, but I remember, and I just verified it, one of their places called Stand Up Harlem has 12 permanent studio apartments. And to my recollection, I don't remember them having really more than 30 or 40 anywhere. And they actually often have fewer. So 28 seems like a ballpark for them. So I will end there, but also a big thank you to Community Board 4 for the work that you've done, and we support you all the way. Once again, I'm not sure about compromising because it feels like we get chipped away at all the time. And you know, we do have the Penn Station redevelopment coming up. And there again, I think we've got to have that affordable housing there on site. Let's not get caught once again with, oh, we'll promise you the working class and middle class housing elsewhere in the district. It's got to be built into the redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Christine. Michael, you have your hand up, Michael? Janine?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Michael.
Okay, so I've been a resident in the neighborhood for 18 years. I'm also a product of a supportive housing facility in the neighborhood. I lived there for 13 years, and I think that it's unfortunate that conversation and the community board work has devolved into not both and, but rather either or. I do support 100% supportive housing in this facility. I think that when we pit the middle class, the working class, the upper middle class against the most vulnerable people in our society, we lose our morals. I think that it's useful to look down the block and look at that paramilitary junta that has a $1 billion budget, instead of forcing people that need these services and these homes back onto the streets or in underserved situations. I don't think that supportive housing services are perfect. I think that a lot of the points that were made in this presentation are correct. The Dorothy Ross Friedman residence where I was living at the time, you know, has its issues, but it served me well for the 13 years I've lived there. And now I'm a productive member of the society, and I am a contribute and a taxpayer and all that jazz. So I'm kind of upset that it's lowered to 25% and that everybody's agreeing on that. I wish it was at least maybe 50. It's a good compromise, but you know, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Michael. It's a good opinion. This board, don't forget, we got a lot of supportive housing at the slaughterhouse site right in the heart of Hudson Yards. So we are trying to accomplish exactly what you're talking about. Anita, I see your hand is up. Anita,
yes.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you, JD. Steve Belita couldn't be here tonight, and I am here to speak for him, and he's chair of HK 4954. And he just feels that this, the mayor a few weeks ago announced that we should have housing for the police, that we should support so that we have more of our police force living in the area. And this is right next to the precinct. So he feels that we should be requesting housing for the police, or as I mentioned before, JD, doing some parking for some of the police vehicles, which have been burdensome for the community. Anyway, I just wanted to add that as another consideration of what we could be doing with that site.
And I'm assuming you're saying not just police, but any civil servants who are in those models.
Or civil servants, you know, teachers would be lovely. You know, we really don't do a lot to house the people who work in our area, who have jobs in our area, who just can't afford to live in our area.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah. Anita, are you?
I mean, yeah, I'm good. Other communities do that. We happen to be a community that does not take that into consideration. That's all I'm saying. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question? Go ahead, Christine.
I want to speak to the characterization that the community somehow is against supportive housing. We are not against supportive housing. And I want to make that very clear. This area is, I think, ranked third in the entire city in terms of the amount of supportive housing that we provide. The issue is a promise, and I want to make this very clear. A promise was made as part of an overall overarching agreement where there would be low income and supportive housing, working and middle class housing, and then of course the luxury housing of the Hudson Yards. The luxury apartments were built. The low and supportive housing apartments as part of that agreement were built. The middle part was not built. And I think that it's very dangerous to go back on promises that were made in writing, signed agreement by the mayor and the then council member to provide this. And if you don't believe me, then let me ask you, what is the value of the piece of paper that if you say, well, it should be 100% supportive, well, what's to stop it from changing in 5 years or 10 years? And so I think it's very important that we focus on this idea of the promise that was made in writing and signed. And I think that's what we need to focus on.
Thank you, Christine. I see Richard Marins there. Richard.
I am.
Welcome.
First question, I'm still not getting the HASA thing. Is that going to result in neighborhood preference at all?
There are multiple layers here. The building, no matter what, of the non-supportive units, meaning the 75%, 50% of those will have a neighborhood preference. That's how the lottery works.
I got that part. What about the 25%? We know the 15% homeless comes out of department.
No, we're saying it's 25% homeless here, not 15. And those are all shelter referrals. Some of those shelter referrals may be individuals who came from our neighborhood originally, unless it is possible to negotiate further with HPD or DHS, Richard, to see if there's any way to have non-shelter referrals or HASA. That's how it's set up now. It's all shelter referrals.
Got it. If it was HASA, would that result in neighborhood referrals?
Again, the shelter referrals, we're asking for them to be HASA. They're asking for non-shelter referrals for HASA. That's a request we can make, and I think we should bring that up at the housing committee.
Got it. Will do. I just wanted to say that we have a tremendous responsibility here. This is in the heart of our neighborhood. This is a site that will shape us in so many ways and is so critical to this community. And we have been the target of disorganized presentation, a disorganized process, and an extremely dishonorable one. And I just don't think that we should be paralyzed or not be up to meeting our obligations by attacks on us for not being favoring and doing what we could for supportive housing when the numbers and the statistics say so differently, as so well presented by Jim. So my point is that we seem to have a lot of agreement that this is a monstrosity for this neighborhood that will live on for generations if we don't stop it. That it is disorganized and chaotic. We don't have a clear picture of what's going on. I really think that we ought to try to kill this thing. We've got enough talent in this Zoom meeting alone to do this better than these people are doing it and have something we can be proud of instead of an attack on this neighborhood. That's it.
Thank you, Richard. I see Elka Fierce from 4743 Block Association. Elka, did you wish to speak?
Yes. Hi. So, if we had our druthers, I'd like it to be 2009 and go back to that plan. I totally agree with Christine Gorman, who was so eloquent. at that time we needed a lot of moderate and middle income housing. I think the need today is even more. And to the original plan the plan that HPD presented at the last meeting was just so disturbing. And as Richard said, I mean, they just lied to us. And so I don't want to, we've all said that, and I think we all agree. What I want to I'm going to just read two little things that I want to refresh everyone's memory. And that's part of Clinton's special zoning text, which says that our goals include, among others, to preserve and strengthen the residential character of the community, and to preserve the small scale character and variety of existing stores and activities, and to control new commercial uses in conformity with the existing character of the area. So what HPD have proposed certainly does not follow our guidelines from our special district. I think what you guys have done, what CB4 has done, your alternate proposal actually is good. Be nice to go back to the original and say, no, none of it works, but obviously there's going to have to be give and take to get anything. So yeah, I don't trust anything. I don't know how we can make it so that if they agree to what was just presented, that it can't be changed ever, even in the next administration or whatever, that would be good. Anyhow, you've all said it. The building is ugly. That needs to be addressed. Zoning should not change. Should not be attacked. Our zoning. We need to get as close to what we had wanted originally, and that is moderate and middle income housing. And again, we understand the need for supportive and willing to give that 25%. So that's it.
Thank you, Erica. I see Katie Savage is with us. Katie, can you
Hi.
have your hand up?
Yes,
Oh, there you
forgive me for not going on camera. I am a multitasking millennial and currently have a face mask, so I'm going to avoid that. I agree with, everything everyone else has said, and the plan, I think, makes a lot of sense. It does bring it more to the original agreement, and it seems like, that original agreement did include a lot of supportive housing, and it's just that the supportive housing was built first. And this has taken so long that everybody's forgotten about that. So I think this is great. One thing I want to bring up, and this is, maybe a topic for another day, but the reality of this cost matrix and the AMI percentages is not realistic. 130% AMI for a single person. A studio apartment is $2,200 a month. A 1-bedroom apartment is $2,800 a month. So you can get a 1-bedroom apartment market rate in a walk-up building for like $2,300. So this is not really affordable housing. And I think that's the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around in all these discussions is how can people even afford to live here, people who are middle income? I've said this on multiple of these meetings. I have lived in New York City for 17 years, and I have been rent poor this entire time. The fact that it's based on your gross income makes absolutely no sense because that is not the money you have to spend. All the costs are going up, and this creates a really difficult decision for people of, do I try to get into a studio apartment in a building like this, or try to do market? It's really difficult, and I don't know if that's anything that this board has a way to kind of push back on and bring to light, but it's difficult because I'm in a situation where I don't know if I can continue to afford to live in this neighborhood. Even if I were to qualify for affordable housing, the few amount of middle income affordable we have, it's still a real stretch when you look at it. So again, I totally agree with everybody everybody's comments on this plan. I think this was a great idea, and I really hope the city goes back and holds to their promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. You raised very good points. Joe?
Yeah, I want to speak to this issue. The 30% of gross income is a federal standard, and that is something that is really beyond our purview, but we can certainly talk about it, but it is definitely a federal standard. The second thing is this is a new construction elevator building, and I want to just quote a few things that make people's eyes fall out of their heads. 675 West 59th Street, one bedrooms start at $52.21. On the Waterside Plaza, one bedroom start at $29.85. East 126th Street, one bedroom starting at $31.40. And 315 West 57th Street, one bedroom starting at $37.15. These numbers are not reachable by anybody. And here's my favorite, the Frank, that's a building on 11th Avenue, 57th Street. The one bedroom start at $41.05. So if we're able to deliver one bedrooms that are much less than that, we are definitely hitting a group of people in our district that cannot afford that market. That market is over the top. Thanks.
It's crazy. Janine, do we have other members of the public who would like to speak?
Oh, wait, one more person. Oh, Robert Gilbo, I'm bringing him over.
Thank you. Welcome, Robert. Hi, Robert. Robert, can you hear?
You need to unmute, Robert.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I just wanted to ask for clarification on the zoning issues. Is it possible to, I forget what point that was, Joe, on your presentation. I believe that you had mentioned that you were going to try to get the zoning changes into a different tranche, for lack of a better word. So could you clarify what's happening with their request for zoning variances?
So 1 minute, I'll put that back up for a second. So there are multiple actions here, Robert. One is a rezoning of the underlying district from residential to commercial. The community board's request is that we do not proceed on that whatsoever. And that instead, anything that can't be handled via the special permits just be a mayoral zoning override. And then on the various special permits and changes they're making district-wide, instead we create very limited text that is applicable only toward affordable housing development on publicly owned land adjacent to a mass transit or water supply support facility, trying to tailor it so it doesn't create a precedent in the entire preservation area. Does that help?
Got it. But that would be a zoning variance, or that would just be
the actions are different. The one action is a rezoning. That's not a variance. That's actually remapping and changing the zone from residential to commercial. We do not support that. The next items are in the zoning text for the Clinton Special Zoning District, which is a multi-page document saying how and what you can do something. Instead of making changes to that text that would affect the entire district, we'd have them very limited changes in order for the project to proceed without affecting other sites throughout the district.
Thank you. I just want to go on record as saying that I think the rezoning has to be non-negotiable. I mean, we cannot have that entire block or district rezoned commercial. So I hope we really hold the line on that. And thanks for putting that into your plan. I'm really leery about about even making the other changes, but it looks like you've done your best to sort of limit them to specifically that site and that site alone. But I think that the no rezoning should be a non-negotiable on our part. So thanks for your work on that.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to go back before we end Dolores's question. If anybody from the committee would like to weigh in, Frank or Bob, who's been with us for a while, or Sarah, I know you're with us. If anybody wants to weigh in on this. Brian, you had a quick question, your hand's up.
Yeah, I was jotting numbers down at the very beginning, and I I don't know if I got these correct. In the current proposal by HPD, 69%, 69 units are referrals from DHS. And I think, Joe, you were answering this question during the public question session. When Housing Works came and made their pitch, they talked about the prevalence of HIV and AIDS in Hell's Kitchen and the need.
That's correct.
Need for affordable housing for that community, supportive housing for that community. But now, doesn't this contradict what they were pitching to us in terms of satisfying this need? If these 69 referrals, which take up the large percentage of supportive housing, are DHS referrals, there is no mandate that they're DHS referrals from within our community. So I don't see how the current proposal they've put forth is addressing the need for supportive housing for people, long-term survivors of HIV and AIDS in our community. And I just, that's a contradiction to what they're even proposing. Am I misunderstanding something there?
No, I think that the presentation by Housing Works was not accurate until we had that discussion with HPD that talked about the referrals coming from DHS. So again, I think that, Brian, please attend the Housing Committee meeting because we need to be able to get this clear. This has been said by HPD, and I will trust that the Director of Supportive Housing understands how the protocols work.
Okay, so I just think, just to sort of clarify, either Housing Works is confused or they are pitching this in such a way that I hate to say is disingenuous.
Well, again, we will get a better
address that
idea
in HHS. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Frank or Bob, you want to weigh in on this? Bob, I know you've been with us for a long time. Bob?
Had on mute. Yeah, I just quickly, I mean, I'm okay since the community seems to be okay with the proposal that was put out there. It wasn't the deal back when I was district manager and we negotiated with Anna, Joe, Lee, and JD, but it is what it is right now. And these things in total, you can never like all of it. There's always different pieces, even dislike, but in total, since the community seems to be okay with it, I'll go along with the proposal. And I do also agree that the zoning seems to be too much.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. I think
that's basically my thoughts too.
That was
I had one more quick question on the proposal.
Of course, Dale. Go ahead, Dale.
Joe, is my assumption correct that the operator, the provider of social services, would have some kind of program space, probably on the second floor of the building?
Yes, that's what we're going to find out next week. Because normally we get a presentation that would say program space, activities. We don't have any of those details yet. That's what we'll get next week.
What's usually entailed in something like this where they were, providing social services for 28 units? So offices, a couple of
there's usually an office suite for case management staff, also for counseling, and depending upon how many people are employed as part of the program, that sets the staffing level. And then there's some community room space for activities or things like that, depending upon what their program is. But again, our problem is we normally would hear about all of this, Dale, before we got to the ULURP, and we have something in general, not particular to this building.
Understood. I just want to get a general sense of what that might be. Would it be like, for instance, like a cafeteria? Would that be a part?
Oh, no. These are supportive housing in this case are apartments, totally independent. And it is about services, a rough idea of services. It's counseling, entitlements, medical, mental health, things that may be brought in or brought out of the building for individuals who are in need, or Housing Works, being a larger organization, may refer A, B, and C tenant to another location to get certain services, but have a case manager work and monitor. We just don't know. But that's
so largely. I mean, understood that we don't have the particulars, but generally there's an expectation there would be caseworker offices in that space.
Yes.
Okay.
And possibly some program space for counseling sessions, things like that. We don't know.
Good questions for the housing committee about how exactly it works. Dolores, are you there? You're gonna end?
JD, can we also bring Sarah Pizer over from Hudson Companies?
So,
Oh.
I only wanted to just, I know that
Sure.
all of us on the committee and on the board have heard about this project for a long time, but I had some outreach that happened during the meeting. There's a lot of folks that are new to our meetings. There are a lot of folks that are new to what's going on. And I think that we're looking at this project in isolation. I think it was spoken very eloquently by both Elka and Christine Gorman. The narrative of broken promises really comes from looking at our district as a whole and all of the affordable housing that we advocate for, all the supportive housing that we advocate for as a board, as a community as a whole. This particular project was one piece of a larger puzzle. And I'm not saying this for our committee, I'm saying this for the broader public that may just be tuning in today or maybe just the last 2 months, that we're not trying to say we do not want these greater opportunities to bring more supportive housing for the most vulnerable. We want to support the most vulnerable within our community. But this piece of the puzzle was the piece that was not fulfilled in that promise from almost 15 years ago, where we were looking to go ahead and have low income and moderate and middle. So we're not trying to go ahead and exclude anyone from being part of this community. What we're trying to do is add that final piece that was not brought into the community. So I just wanted to say that because I had some outreach where some folks were a little bit confused about our position, and wanted to just echo the comments of Christine Gorman that we are a very welcoming community. And this is one specific project in a larger district that we advocate for affordable housing in general.
And
So
I would just say, and there was lower income housing as part of the deal that happened. It's not as if there
Right.
wasn't lower income housing. It was
So
part of the original deal, and it did have that part happen.
This community board negotiated 150 units of SRO preservation for supportive housing as part of the Western Rail Yards agreement. 132 were renovated. We also then added 75 more as part of the whole slaughterhouse deal. So we have continued on the multiple tracks for low, moderate, middle. It's just that the moderate middle was completely ignored in this location.
Very good point. Very good point, Dolores and Joe. Sarah, welcome. I didn't know you were there, but if you'd like to comment, please do. Introduce yourself, Sarah.
Sure. Okay, thank you for bringing me to the table. I'm Sarah Pizer. I'm a development director at Hudson. Hudson is Housing Works partner on the throughout the RFP and the pre-development process. So there have been a bunch of things that have been mentioned here that I just want to correct, and I've taken some notes. So I'm going to kind of address them in not quite in the order that they came up, but in terms of things that stuck out to me. In terms of the long-term survivor population, I just want to say that the narrative there hasn't changed. It's still our intention to target these supportive units to the long-term survivor population. And so I don't want there to be a feeling that there was a bait and switch there, that is still our intention. And
Sarah, the director of supportive housing stated there'd be shelter referrals. I was in that meeting, and so were you.
Yes, and I think that Housing Works is going to try to work with the agencies to try to bring people with HIV and AIDS into this building.
And you're not hearing this for a second. The current configuration at 60% supportive housing, the agency HPD stated it would be DHS referrals. If we can work together with Housing Works and you to have not just DHS referrals, we all are in a win here. There's no question, but that is not what the agency who stated it would be. Isn't that correct in the meeting we were in together?
Yes, that is correct. But and I just want to say that HPD is also has been a participant in this meeting, and Felipe is here if he can join as well as a panelist to chime in. But yes, and when I say when I bring up formerly homeless, or excuse me, when I bring up long-term survivors of HIV and AIDS, that would also be that would be an additional layer of qualification along with being formerly homeless.
Right, so you're formerly homeless first as a threshold, And then the secondary characteristic is HASA. That is exactly what we represented just now. So it really is not a difference, is it?
But HASA doesn't equal long-term survivors of HIV and AIDS.
Again, I'm going to note again that formerly homeless is the first category.
That's correct.
And that's what HPD said to us, and that's shelter referrals. So that means you must start out in a shelter. If we can work with you and Housing Works, develop a different protocol, we all would be happy.
Okay, and I know that Housing Works is presenting to you all next week.
Right.
Okay, so this meeting also started with is Felipe able to join us? I don't know if he has additional comments to that.
I'm bringing him over now.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you use your time?
Okay, so on the MTA side, I know that they are not here and can't, represent this themselves, but I do want to just kind of reinforce that what they are planning for in Lirio is directly related to the work that they're doing next door in the adjacent rail control center. So there is a connection between those two uses, which I don't want to speak for the MTA, but the idea was that there was some sort of connection between the office space that would be at the Lirio and the adjacent rail control center. I think there was also a comment about there being mostly studios in the proposed building, which is not the case. We are complying with the Western Rail Yard.
They're 50% 2 bedrooms. Yes.
Yeah, for 50% 2 bedrooms and larger.
Hey, Sarah, I just want to let you know that I'm here.
Okay, great. Hey, Felipe.
So I want to say something about the DHS and supported housing units. Joe, you are more aware.
No, just have Sarah finish her comments and then pick up on you.
Okay.
Okay. There was talk about the grocery store. Joe, you stated those square footages correctly, and we're working with a broker, we're working with a retail consultant. We have heard the strong desire for a grocery store. We have spoken to Trader Joe's. We've been told that the space as it currently stands is too small for them. We've spoken to a couple different people there and have checked in over long periods of time. So we will continue to ask them, but we think that this is probably not going to work for them. And so we're trying to figure out what types of grocery stores might be more interested in the space that is available for them, given our current square footages. And I won't comment on the zoning. I think on the land use actions, I think that that's something that I'll leave for HPD, and yeah, I think that those were the major points.
Thank you, Sarah. Felipe, please introduce yourself in case some viewers don't know who you are. And welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. JD, thank you for letting me talk a little bit. My name is Felipe Cortez. I am the Deputy Director of the Manhattan Planning Team. And again, thank you for hosting us tonight on this land use meeting. I just wanted to address a little bit the comments about the supported housing units. And I just want to say that we are committed to continue working with the community board, with everybody in the conversation on how to guarantee that the supportive units are dedicated to the designated population of HIV long-time survivors. So yeah, to answer your question, Joe, we are committed to continue working with you guys. On the land use action piece, I just want everybody to know that we're currently working with CB4 leadership on how to, improve or make those land use actions better. We're committed to continue working that conversation. Today, I just spoke with Jesse about it. It might be, sorry for the background noise, we're trying to put the kid to sleep. So where I was. So I talked to Jesse today. This is going to be a long conversation, and but the good thing, I believe, as Joe mentioned, we're having a conversation, and it's in very good terms. We are looking to address your suggestions, your issues with it, with the land use actions, and in order to continue that good work, we we are expecting the CB4 leadership to come back to us with a series of suggestions, language that could be incorporated on the existing special permit or some sort of other instrument that we can use to make this better for, for CB4. So I just want to let you guys know that we're working on it. We are committed to continue working with you on this. And I think it's going well. It's like, what are your impressions with that, Joe?
I think that we've had a tone, I will say for the public, in the meeting committee board had about a week ago, we've had a tone change with HPD. We're engaging, we're talking, and our goal is to work together to come up with some sort of solution here that meets the community's needs and that makes the project something that we can all live with. Is that accurate, Felipe?
That's very accurate. Good.
That is like, sorry, JD, go ahead.
Thank you for those encouraging comments. Dolores, you had,
yeah,
I do want to wrap this up.
I know, but Felipe, now that you're on with us, and I don't want to keep you long since the little one needs to get to bed, but the clock is ticking. We've started the ULURP process. This board has offered real concrete, clear suggestions on how to clean up the land use part of it. There are suggestions there are proposals that have come to us that make no sense when there are alternatives. We've provided alternative language. The mayoral override has been used. The comment that came back to say we're trying to make uniformity or clean up issues across land use. I know that's not your department, but the whole point is we as a board have provided a path to making this project cleaner. And I appreciate the tone is changing. There's a new administration. I appreciate that conversations are still ongoing, but the clock is ticking. We've created the roadmap. Please let's figure out a way to bring this home. We want an affordable housing site here. We want to get this done. We're giving you the blueprint.
So just that end is that the request the board's made is to talk to the land use attorneys for Hudson and really engage with this to determine how we can get the cleanest and simplest language. And Hudson has agreed, and we hope to set that meeting up next week. It means at least we're taking steps in a direction toward get to something that everyone can live with. It doesn't mean it's done. So I never say it's not done until it's done, but at least we're moving in that direction. And thanks to Hudson and to HPD on that.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Felipe. A special thanks, Joe and Savannah, for this wonderful framework to get this conversation moving along. Thank you for that, Joe and Savannah. Jeffrey LaFrancois, our chair, you've been sitting there very patiently. Did you want to make a comment before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I think just broadly on process, JD, which I'm sure you're going to do, and to echo, what was said already, my main issue here as chair of the board, which is an institution, is that the city and an administration should not have the right to rip up a community agreement, a signed agreement, ever. Unless it comes to the table and the community decides that the agreement too indeed should be ripped up. We're not saying that here. So there's a significant, our feet are really steeped in principle. I think on this debate, this fight, this approach, and that is this is a fight we need to maintain, because this is not going to be the last time we're having a discussion about the Clinton Special District, zoning precedents, and community agreements. So excellent commentary this evening from the community as expected. Excellent questions, hearing from the committee, and having the pleasure to be a part of these committee discussions is really great. Process-wise, we'll see if the committee is coming up with something tonight. I know block associations are going to be meeting throughout the month. We'll see if we take this up at exec at the end of the month, but our decision or our recommendation, an opinion, needs to be delivered to the city by March 15th. So, we're looking to pass a letter at our full board meeting, the first Wednesday in March. And so we have these next couple of weeks to get that together and continue to figure out what the strongest position we can have going forward is. So thanks for the time, JD.
So
Thank you,
I just wanted to know,
Jeffrey.
our goal was
I
to
really
get
want to move this along. Joe, go ahead.
yeah, our
Paul
goal was
has
to
his-
get consensus among the committee tonight on these points, and I feel we achieved consensus and made some changes, like, for example, putting the HASA language in, Dale going back and forth about the windows, like all of us understand exactly the thing we're looking at. So now we're all on the same page. And it's going to go to housing for the social service side. And then I believe we're going to reconcile or consolidate the comments from housing on the social service and this, and it will be, Jeffrey, am I wrong? Like the final piece will come from, settle that exec, but come from the two committees together, right? Isn't that what we're doing?
I envisioned a joint letter, but that we'd have to sort of vote to codify it as a whole. JD, I see your head shaking.
I think codify is not reconcile, but just kind of blend them together.
Clarify, right.
Clarify. Yeah, we can work that out. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think we just sort of adopt the committee's recommendations, right? So that way they're enjoined together, both of housing and land use.
Yeah. Paul, you had your hand up, Paul?
Yeah, I was, if we needed a motion of some sort, I was prepared to make it. And I'm glad that we had this conversation about the timeline and that the letter would come from full board in March. That gives us some time to do it because, as many people here know, I was in the school of go nuclear. This is the ULIP process. The time is ticking. HPD is not responding, and we're not making the progress that we think we want. And we should go back to open green space on the parcel and everything else that we negotiated in 2000 and 2009, and tell them that they get nothing from this ULIP process because they haven't been cooperating. So I'm glad that we're at this point now, where, as Jeffrey points out, our history as a board is to figure out solutions to problems and not continue to strive over problems that exist and rather fix things. So I'm fully in support of this compromised position that has been hammered out in great detail. I'm in support of having HHHS figure out the more nuanced components of the social service programs that need to be provided and negotiate those number of supportive housing users. So I'd like to propose that if we need a motion, that we move forward with the template that Joe and his team have assembled for us and have edited through tonight's discussion, and give those of us in the leadership team the authority to move forward with those negotiations.
I second
We
it.
have a motion. We have a second on that?
A lot of seconds.
Okay, any discussion about Paul's? I guess not. All in favor of Paul's motion?
Aye.
Are they, anybody opposed? Thank you, Paul. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeffrey, for being with us throughout this meeting. Thank you, members of the community. Thank you, Felipe, for being here with us, and Sarah. Thank you very much for participating. Special thanks to Savannah Wu and to Joe for doing this. We have luckily Jesse Bodine has returned from Key West, and he is with us now. And there are two items that Jesse will talk about. One's about 47th Street, the letter we had out from our last meeting about a illegal partial demolition of a building on 47th Street. We met with people, Jesse.
Yeah, they turned my plane around, JD. I don't know what you told that pilot, but I was about to get away from you guys. But no, so 343 West 47th Street. This was on your agenda last month. You voted to write a letter to the owners. The owners actually attended the meeting, the committee meeting, where they agreed to meet with us again. We've subsequently to that committee meeting, we've met with them once. We've had a long discussion. It was a very productive conversation. I think we've all been here before. I could already see Dale's head just shaking and being like, we've been here before. I get it. I hear you. No. I'm just saying I could feel it. And so we are, cautiously optimistic that we are hopefully working with someone who is going to be transparent and honest. Joe was very clear. I think JD was very clear about that there needs to be a real solid attempt to preserve the building and keep it from any more damage and secure the building before we start talking about anything about redevelopment of the site and that kind of thing. They agreed to that. We agreed that we would help facilitate a conversation with DOB. So we're having that on Friday, I believe, if my memory serves.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're having a meeting with DOB on Friday with them, with the owners and the rep and DOB to begin that conversation. The other thing I think which was really good, which I'm a little delayed on Elka and Richard on the Block Association one, is that they want to be involved on the, they want to get involved in the block and in the Block Association. So we talked to them about all of the kind of quality of life issues that the Block Association does such a good job on right now, particularly focusing on rodents and rats issues. And so they want to be involved in that as well. And so I think that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse, for that. Dale, your cat cannot vote on any.
Yes, she can. New rules.
And just to make it very, very, very clear, we asked the owners to solely focus right now on safety and making sure the building did not fall down. That's the only thing. And then we'll talk about redevelopment. And they agreed. So whatever we can do to help the buildings department work with them to get the building safe, that's the key part. Right, Chris?
Yeah. And then the other topic was landmarking in Hell's Kitchen. And so if we remember correctly, we used some funds that we received from the city council to obtain an expert to review the potential of a Hell's Kitchen historic district. He's been a complete gentleman and great. He owed us some work due to a delay, all COVID related, all kinds of stuff. So he has actually come back and taken a look at it again. He did produce the report. We sent that to LPC. We wrote a letter of recommendation. We actually applied for a historic district to be considered. Official process that's still kind of in the pipeline. We'll circle back with Eric to try to move that along. But in the meantime, he went back and actually took a look at specific buildings. So these would be individual landmarks, which are sort of help build and foster the argument for a larger historic district. Because right now we have very few individual landmarks in our district comparatively to our neighborhood to the south, as Paul knows, where all we do is review landmarks preservation applications. So don't be careful what you wish for, but so he has come back with a very extensive actually set of notes and locations, and I think JD and Joe and Brian, and maybe if someone else is, some folks, a couple other folks are interested, we're going to sort of take a kind of a finer look at that, maybe pick out some that we want to focus on and bring to the committee for consideration for individual landmarking. And so I think that's where we are with that.
Thank you very much, Jesse, for that report. I want to thank everybody for staying through this meeting. It's been a long road, not over yet. We got a ways to go.
JD, I'm sorry to interrupt. Blake Gopnik has his hand up in the public.
I'm sorry, say again?
Blake Gopnik has his hand up in the attending section. I'll bring him over.
Okay, was it? Okay,
Blake?
Quick question. Mr. Godley, are you there? Blake, welcome, Blake. Blake, I know you're with us. Unmute. I know you're worried about 47th Street, the building. Blake?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm one of the shareholders at 341 West 47th Street. And I first of all, want to just say how fabulous your meetings are. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, Blake, you're the building next to the one that was partially demolished.
Exactly, directly east of the building. And just wondering, I think that our building is, I'm one of the shareholders here, and I think that our building is probably more directly impacted by the 343 than anyone else in the neighborhood. The Block Association does fabulous work. You all do amazing work, but just wondering the extent to which we can be involved or at least know what's going on Jesse, in terms of what's happening in that building. We're obviously really afraid of what's happening and what will happen. And we're just worried that we're obviously want to keep track of it. We've had real serious mildew problems, mold problems. We
actually talked about this.
Yeah,
Talked about this in our meeting.
So Blake, I'm happy, listen, I'm happy to make sure that you guys are all in contact with each other. And that one of the things I think we maybe need to do, and we didn't directly bring this up in the first meeting, but now we're talking about, which we normally do. We usually do it with bigger projects, but I think with this example, I think we're going to want them to be providing the community, meaning you folks, the block association, us, maybe with what we call a look ahead, and consistent construction updates. I mean, obviously they have to have agreements with you guys legally as neighbors to do work, to put up scaffolding. There has to be those conversations between private property owners, and that should be happening. And if it's not, then that certainly needs to. But I mean, in terms of just general updates as to what's going on, what the plan is, I think that's a reasonable request at this point. And we can bring that up when we talk to them on Friday for sure. But tomorrow or tonight, I can connect you by email to make sure at least then you folks are, you personally are in contact with them.
Yeah, I should just say that I think you've been dealing with someone called Brad Simmons, and in 3 years of very constant conversations, he has never appeared on site. We've never talked to him before. Kelvin Zhu has always presented himself as the sole owner of this building. So we're a little surprised to suddenly find someone we've never heard of before and we've never once met or seen.
We're speaking to both of them. I mean, they were both on the conversation that we had, the briefing. But yeah, Brad was the one that showed up at the committee hearing. That's true.
But the lead person in that meeting was Kelvin. He spoke the most, and he was the clearest as to what to do.
Right, yeah. Great, fabulous. Well, thank you all for your help.
Yeah.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Blake. Thank you all. Any motions? Thank you, Jeffrey, for staying with us the entire meeting.
Motion for all of us to get our kitty cats in the camera. I'm inspired by Dale. I'm inspired by Dale.
Come here.
So moved.
Okay, we're totally crazy.
So how many cat owners are on the survey of how many cat owners on the committee?
All right.
Do you want to come back now?
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
I have a cat, but it's under the bed.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you all.